All right, good afternoon, you wonderful wonderfuls, and welcome to the third installment of Workforce Wednesday! All right, my name is Aroian, and I'm the Employment Training Specialist 3 for Arts, Media, Entertainment students. So what does that include? Cinema students, broadcast electronic media arts students, fashion students, photography students, and of course, visual media design students. And that's why we are here today. I am super duper excited that these wonderful wonderfuls have decided to come and take time out of their busy schedule to share their experience and knowledge with you about their careers in visual media design. So some housekeeping items. Number one, bathrooms are over there. Drinking fountain also over there. Please make sure, if you haven't already, sign in. Get a name tag so we know who you are. Where's my name tag? Name tag, right? And make sure to have a cookie, because it's late afternoon and we all know how the energy drains. And most importantly, there are note cards in front of you. The note cards are for you to write down questions you'd like to ask our panelists. When you are done, just put it in the air and I will scuttle over to you and I will grab the card, okay? Before we begin, I'd like to give a really big shout out to our wonderful, wonderful representatives from the Beeman Department, Prentice and Fatima. Let's give it a round of applause to them. They are recording and they're shooting and audio recording this panel, so for later on, you can reference it later, okay? So I just ask that you be attentive listeners, engage, and have fun, because these three kick ass. All right. So we're going to start with, why don't you tell me about yourself?
Hi, I'm Gabbi. I have been working at Zendesk for 1 year and 5 months and 4 days. I'm not tracking. And I do communications design for them.
Cool. I'm Charlotte. I work at Google. I've been there just over 3 years. And I'm a visual designer, which is kind of like the catch-all for designers that do a lot of different things. So I mostly do illustration, but I also do UI and animation and stuff like that.
Hey, I'm Kelsey. I run my own small branding creative studio. And previously to that, about 1.5 years ago, I was working at Asana. I was there for 4 years, and I am like a brand strategist. I say like a brand strategist because I do a lot of different things, which I'm sure I'll talk about at some point.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, panelists. So first I'd love to start with, what did you want to be when you grew up? When you were a kid? What was like, this is what I want to be? Someone asked, when the adults would ask you.
Yeah, I'll start. I really wanted to be an animator. I was like super obsessed with cartoons. All about Kim Possible. That was like my number one. So I kind of got into first I started just like copying cartoons. Then I started drawing my own. And then I actually went to school originally for computer animation and wasn't crazy about that and kind of pivoted to illustration. So I've always been kind of in the like, children's media specifically. But yeah, I like wanted to work for, Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or something like that.
Wow, yours is related to what you're doing now.
Yeah, I know, mine has not.
When I was really little, I wanted to be a mathematician, which is crazy because I can't even remember anybody's birthday anymore. Then I wanted to be Miss America. And then I went to school for politics and studied political science and like mainly specialized in Middle Eastern politics. So I kind of wanted to work for the UN or be a diplomat or something like that. And then through many winding twists and turns, I ended up doing this. So nothing related to what I'm doing now.
I literally wanted to be a Smurf. I wanted to be a philosopher and have my own cookie factory. That was like the first thing. The second thing was as I got a little older, I became really obsessed with making money. So I would, with all means, so I would get in all these art contests because I loved making art, like really weird stuff too. And I would just get into them to like win. And then as a kid, I was like, oh, if I keep doing this, I'll get more money. And then it somehow turned into a career. So here I am.
Awesome. Panelists, I would love to know personally, obviously Charlotte, you knew from the get-go this was your jam, right, in some way, shape, or form. Kelsey, not so much, right? Kelsey, Gabbi, like, how did y'all kind of get started on this trajectory, right, in design and strategy and, doing creative work in general?
Okay.
So I had the pleasure of graduating college at the midst of the economic crisis. It was like 2003. So nobody was hiring for, at all, even less for creative jobs. So it was like a bumpy road into where I am today, definitely. As soon as I graduated college, I was like, I need to do something right now to like fill in this gap. So like I went to teach abroad, and then I came back, and then I was like, okay, now I have to get a job. And then I got a job working at a design studio, and I hated it. And it was like not what I wanted to do at all. So then I went into education and started teaching. I started teaching kids how to make art out of trash. And then I woke up one day and I'm like, I really like money. Money is like a theme in my life. Ended up at Bayback, kind of getting my stuff together. And Aria was actually my career coach while I was there, and he was like so amazing. And just treated it like a job. Like I was just like, I'm gonna go ahead and like apply for jobs and work and do everything that I need to do. And one thing led to another. I ended up being like a beta at a program with the city and apprenticing under a designer at the company that I'm working now. And then one thing led to another, and within 6 months they were offering me a full-time position. So bumpy road.
My situation, I graduated college thinking that I was definitively going into the political realm in some way. And then I went and traveled for 2 years. I just kind of was a dirty vagabond, like traveling the world for a couple years. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And at that time, I got like very jaded with politics as well and decided it wasn't the path for me definitively. And I knew that I wanted to move to California. So I moved to California, and I had no connections, no job, and ended up like interning somewhere, working for free somewhere else. A friend was like, you should get hooked up with a temp agency just to like get your feet wet. And I was like really against working at a temp agency for some reason. I just like didn't feel like that's what I wanted to do. Or I weirdly felt like that was like below me in some way. I don't know. I just was like looking for full-time jobs. And I think that was a really stupid mindset, because I got this temp job at this company called Asana. And it just worked out that they needed like a part-time recruiting coordinator, like a super admin job. And again, like I didn't want to be an admin. That wasn't the path that I was looking to go down, but I needed the money. So I said yes. And it turned out that the company was incredible and the culture was amazing. And I didn't really like recruiting, but it was fun and challenging for a little while. And so I asked them to move over to marketing because I wanted to be more in the creative realm. And I think it was just kind of this lesson in like you have this preconceived notion about like what you want to be doing and this idea of what you want your life to look like. And I think people really push you to say like, do what you love, like do what you love. And I think the inverse kind of like love what you do can be really powerful too, because I found myself in this situation that I never intended to be in, just like really, really liking it, like really liking the company and really liking the work. And so honestly, just kind of like following that path is how I ended up being where I am. So it's a totally different area than I ever thought I would work in, but I kind of stumbled upon it by a weird series of events. So.
Excellent. And Kesley, do you want to tell everybody what you're currently up to right now?
Oh, I can't touch his tail, sorry. Yeah, so I left Asana over a year and a half ago and started freelancing because I was curious if I could support myself without a real boss or without a 9-to-5. And I was really surprised to find out that the answer was yes. I was taking some design classes at Bayvac around this time. And the work just kept on coming, and I was partnering and hiring a lot of designers and photographers and illustrators and videographers, and have decided to legitimize it. And so now I'm like running a little creative agency, which is cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Panelists, I would love it if you could share with the audience, what is one way you keep your skill set sharp, or a resource that you utilize to go and learn more about how to enhance your craft?
Oof, I just say yes to everything. Like at work, some things if it piques my curiosity, and if I'm not gonna not sleep at all doing it, because every time that, especially as a designer, like if you have like an opportunity to like challenge yourself, and if it scares you, it's gonna turn out to be good, or it's never gonna, as a designer too, like even if you're proud for a second, you may look at it in a week and you're gonna be like, oh, that's terrible, I can't believe I did that. So you're never gonna be satisfied, but you can try to like get to a place. So say yes to everything that comes along.
Yeah, I would say specifically around illustration, I think visual designers, you're kind of stuck in a weird place of like, you probably have really good taste. So you probably have like, you can look at someone's work and like know that it's good and that you like it. But then you're in the position where you maybe aren't there yet. So it's kind of, it's hard to like create something and know what's good and like what's like top level, and then to also see your own work and know it's not there. So I kind of just, I feel like every month I find another artist that I'm like really into, and they might have some little technique or something that I don't know how to do. So I'll just try and do a piece that kind of emulates them to see if I can push myself up to that level in just a little bit, in a little way. So there's like lots of little technical things. I don't, I draw the way I draw, but there are lots of little like techniques that you can see people implementing, and if you think they're kind of cool, you can figure out a way to kind of incorporate that into your own work. I used to be, when I was in college, like Tumblr was like the bomb. That's where everyone posted all their, design and illustration stuff. I have not been on Tumblr in like 10 years, so I don't know what is going on.
It's still like the black hole of the internet. It's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, right now it's just, for me, it's like Instagram. I just like, will find someone's super cool illustration Instagram, and then you're like watching their stories every day, and you're like, oh, this is kind of weird. I'm like obsessed with this person for a month. But yeah, that's kind of how I like to, keep evolving a little bit. Not too much, but.
Yeah, I hire people like you who like stay up to date on like the cool stuff, and then I have them inform me what's neat, with what's neat. But yeah, I think like for me it'd be like just working with people who have like really different backgrounds and skill sets, because they can push you with like what you think is possible. And in the same way that Charlie was talking about this, like using Instagram and like finding people or just saving people online, like one thing that I do is I just like very regularly, if I see something that's cool, I will like bookmark it and I will try to figure out who made it. And I will like go and find more of their work. And what's really cool is, sometimes like even if you're you have a full-time role or you're doing all these different projects, like some project will come up where there's an opportunity and you're like, oh, that thing I saw would be really, really cool. And you can go back and like find it and try to use it as a reference. Or in my case, I might do that, or I might try to hire that person to work with me on a project. So I'm just like bookmarking like crazy and saving stuff. And so it's to stay on top of things, I like to follow a lot of people who are making like really incredible art or doing really great design or even writing or whatever it might be.
So if I'm hearing you all correctly, it sounds like inspiration from others and the community around creativity is a really big part of your practice, which I think is really awesome. Charlotte, I would love to know, who is like one of the most recent projects that you've tried to emulate? How did it turn out?
Well, so it's kind of funny. So I mentioned that I originally went to school for computer animation. So I was like all in the Maya world, and it was like a dark computer lab with no windows. And it was really depressing, and I felt like I didn't want to be in that world anymore. So I kind of got a bad taste in my mouth around 3D art. But, since I've started working, and since there's been this kind of boom of like C4D for designers, and it's not just for animators, it's not just for these like really technical people, there's kind of like this whole 3D art explosion. I like got back into it. I also had to do it for work, so I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll do it. But yeah, so Jack Sachs, he's on Instagram. I don't know, he just does this weird like 3D little monster people. But it's kind of cool. He mixes like gradients and, like very high res textures with very simple shapes. So that's who I'm into right now. He does a lot of like big eyeballs that just kind of like sit around. I don't know. Yeah.
So Jack Stacks is the guy that you're life stalking right now?
Yeah, and then they all post stories, and like they're not stories about art, they're just stories about their lives. So I'm like, oh, this is like, it's like, I don't know about your dog, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Yeah.
This is open to any of the panelists. I want to hear about the very first time you sat down and tried to like sketch something, draw something, design something, animate something, like how much, what was that experience like? How were you feeling? How much energy did it require for you to even get to that point, right? Just because I know a lot of people in the room are, some of them are starting, some are in the middle, some, are like, I don't consider myself a real designer yet because I haven't been paid or anything, and, I would love for y'all to share kind of like your nascent beginnings.
Well, like I said before, I was super into cartoons. So I was just like a total nerd. And I remember just like looking up all the character designers for all the shows I liked. So it was really cool as you like Google image search and you see stuff from the actual shows. But then if you kind of went and looked at the people that like actually, made the stuff that you were watching, that was like where like the treasure trove of art was. So yeah, Steven Silver, he's the character designer for Kim Possible. I'm like, feel like such a dork right now. But he also did Danny Phantom. But his stuff is like awesome. And so I remember I like found his blog and just tried to copy his sketches. Doing that, I just did that on paper, and then like digital tablets were a thing. So I was like, oh my god, I need like a Wacom tablet. So I saved up and I bought a Wacom tablet, and then I was like into like the digital world. But yeah, it totally started just like really like feeling something when I looked at like these really nice character drawings and trying to kind of emulate them. They did not look very good, and it was very frustrating all the time. Like it never felt like that good doing it. But every once in a while you do something, you're like, oh, that's like better than I thought it would be, and you get that little rush. Yeah.
Yeah, I started off, I can't even remember a time when I didn't paint. And then when I was in high school, I got really serious about it, and I thought I was going to go to school for studio art. Actually, I apprenticed under a painter that I liked, and then was getting all these regular classical techniques of, just trying to like get light on oil paintings, and then I was like, oh, but I'm not gonna get a job doing this. So I found graphic design super intriguing because I had never done it, and then I thought that it would be like the commercial way of like what I wanted to do in a sense, and I started like I would just do things for free for everyone, like. It's like, oh, you have like a small business or whatever, and you want me to do like your logo catalog or whatever. Like I would just, or even like the dumbest things. Like I would just like try to make it be like a design project, even though it's like terrible. Like everything was like terrible. I didn't know how to use like I would like watch like a couple of tutorials on Photoshop, and I was like, I can make a logo that's gonna be great. But it was probably all garbage, and that was like, that's also like the funny thing about like design too, is like you are probably here in this room, or you're probably trying to get on this path because you have like a good affinity for like colors and textures and all these things, and you're already an artistic person. And then design is like this weird discipline in which like everything's kind of has to make sense, and it's in a grid, and you're starting to learn like all these different tools and all these different softwares, and everything that you'll do is gonna suck at the beginning because it's the first time that you're doing it, and that's totally fine, because everybody has to go through it, and nobody can take away the fact that you have this affinity for color and that you are artistic. So it's kind of a weird thing, because even the most talented people that I know are always like, I suck, like I suck. It's hard to like see things that you did 5 years ago and still be proud of them. So we're all trying to get there, I think.
I think for me, one of the kind of greatest like challenges with sort of my career path and figuring it out is that I've always gravitated towards a lot of creative pursuits or activities, but it's only been as a hobby. So I was really into photography for a long time, or I used to write a lot. I've messed with painting. It's been terrible, like all sorts of things. And so I think I had a very hard transition. And like people would see photographs and they'd be like, oh, they're beautiful. Like, you're really good at this. But it never moved from like being a hobby to being professional. And I think I had an enormous amount of imposter syndrome about sort of like moving into the creative realm professionally, which I think a lot of people struggle with, like doing it as just an art form or a hobby to like asking people to pay you for it or trying to get a job. And I think one of the things that's been cool for me is realizing that like I can be in the creative realm without necessarily being the one who's like pushing pixels. Like I can collaborate with designers, and I have like a role in the creative process by like working to bring something to life in a different way. And so that's been like such a process for me. And I'll say like, the first time I ever did that like professionally and was like really, testing the water with that, I didn't have any of the vocabulary like whatsoever. I had an affinity towards all of these things that you were maybe talking about, and like had an eye for like layout or clarity or like whatever it might be, but I just like didn't have the vocabulary for if you're like designing a website, talking about like a banner image or like a footer or like a card or all these things that you sort of maybe learn in school or you learn like on the job. Like I didn't have the words for any of those, and it was really difficult for me. I think back to some of those earlier meetings and I was like, I suck. I didn't know what I was talking about. Like no one's taking me seriously. And you just have to kind of like go with your intuition, and you'll like pick up the vocabulary and the right ways to collaborate with people like along the way. And so I think like me starting and not knowing what I was doing, not knowing what my medium was, not knowing how to make a career out of any of these things, to go into a place where I just am like throwing myself out there and trying to be artful in all of those interactions has been like a really, really crazy and big jump.
I think you bring up a good point about like having the words to speak to it. If you're not at like what you were saying, like you don't know this program, you don't know, how to technically do something, I think the first and like most important part is being able to see and being able to critique. And even if you can't personally do that, like that is a huge skill. Like if you look at, when Apple puts out a new iOS and you don't just accept it, you can actually look at it and see, what are the changes they made? Why do you think they made those changes? It actually helps you kind of, when you get to the point when you're actually trying to do it for yourself, have the understanding and have the ability to critique your own work. and it kind of takes the pressure off of like, you don't need to know how to do everything right away, but what you can do always is always be looking at something, like look at that poster back there, like, oh, could they have changed something, you know? Kind of be really critical of what you see around you, because that's something that you can always work on, even if you're not just sitting at a computer and like watching some YouTube tutorial or something. So
I think that's so key. Like, and professionally, you'll get asked this a lot, right? Like, what do you think? Or on my side, it's I'm constantly bringing like creative work to a client, and the worst thing that people can say is like, I don't like it. I'm not afraid of like, I don't like it at all, but for anybody to say I don't like it and not explain why, it's really hard. And so I think that if you're ever put in that position and you don't have the vocabulary for it, if you can just like express feelings like, those colors feel too moody for me, and you're not talking about like what other color to pair it with, or you're like, you know, you have to say that font instead of like that typography. It doesn't matter. Like, that font feels very heavy or feels too like outer spacey. Like, communicating feeling through feedback, I think, is a really helpful way to kind of start putting yourself in a more like professional setting or growing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, especially creatively, like you can be amazing and come up with amazing things like on your own, but like it'll be even more, it'll be greater like if you just get 4 other people, even if they're not designers, to look at anything that you do, because the reality of like anything that you do is that you want it to be seen, and you want people to feel things when they see it, and or even think, you know, just like any kind of emotion, basically. So it's super important to like be seen, and it's like the hardest thing too, right? To like be like, look at the thing I made. Like it? Yeah, you like it? Yeah, but really important. And then also do it for other people as well.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists. My next question.
Thank you, Aria.
You are my pleasure. My next question for y'all in the audience is, I would love to hear about a time when you just felt like, oh my God, I've hit rock bottom, and I'm not getting out of bed today. It's just game over, man, game over.
So many times.
Yesterday?
I'll say I came to Google. I have a BFA in illustration. I have a pretty particular skill set, which has been great because it means I get to do, like, if a project comes in and they're like, oh, you're the illustrator, I'm like, yes, I get to do it. But it's also like I've had to learn more UI, UX design, like literally like pushing pixels, like you just said. I have never had any training for that. So I'm like, when I got to Google, I was like, oh my God, like if I'm gonna, last year I need to learn these skills, because that's, where the bread and butter really comes from for this company. And I definitely like had some imposter syndrome. Like the first time I was asked to like actually do, like design layout, not just illustration stuff. And I working on it, I was like so upset because like I said, I could see what good stuff looked like and I knew it was good, and then I could see what I was doing and I knew it wasn't good, and I couldn't figure out how to like close that gap. So definitely learning a new skill in an environment where everyone's really, really, really good at it already was pretty hard. To get through it, I think I just relied on the people around me. I have a really great manager who's really interested in my career growth, and I just showed everything. Like, it probably is what made me a junior designer at the time, but like I showed like 5 or 6 people, and I would check in with them like twice a day. Whereas if you're a little bit more senior, you can kind of, have the confidence to make those decisions for yourself. But I just kind of trusted the people around me that they weren't going to think I was like a total loser for like asking them so many questions. But yeah, eventually I like got through it, and every project gets a little bit better, but that was like that first project I took on was like, I was like banging my head up against the desk. I was very, very frustrated.
I said yesterday because it's like kind of true. I think I'm self-employed now, and it's been really hard. It's been really empowering and really amazing, and also really, really hard, I think. And I imagine if a lot of you are in the creative field, some of you will go the self-employment route as well, or try to freelance. I think people have this sort of like idea that I get to travel freely and work for myself and do whatever I want during the day because I'm self-employed, and like a lot of that is true and it's awesome, but it's also really, really exhausting being your own boss all the time. And I think with schoolwork or work, you sort of go through these waves of like some weeks or days or even like months you're just more demotivated than you normally are. Like you're just having a rough month, and on top of that, like someone breaks up with you, or something happens to a friend, or like you crash your car. Just life happens, and when you're self-employed, it becomes that much more amplified. And there are days when it's just like really tough, and all you want is somebody to tell you what to do. So you have to wake up every morning and think about all the things that you have to do, and then just to live your life. And then on top of that, you need to tell yourself to do all of the work things as well. And so the lows can be really, really low, and it oscillates for me a lot. The highs are ridiculously high, and it's awesome, and it's so empowering, and I'm my own boss, and I can like work from Europe, and I can like go to yoga at noon, and I can like screw up something and then try it again the next day. It's like incredible, and I wouldn't change it right now, but like the lows are real. Like they're real. And I had one yesterday. But I'm good today.
I'd say two very low points professionally. The first time was my first career job that I got. I was like working for a luxury lifestyle designer, which that in itself should have been a big like no for me, like because chairs have to be $10,000, you know. So that was terrible. It didn't align with myself and me, and like the guy whose company I work for. Like he was just not an ethical person, and it was consuming my life. Like I would wake up. I'd be like, no. Another day. But it was my first real job. I hate the real job thing because I feel like anybody who does any work anytime it's a job. So like I was like, I got to do this. This is just like what work is. This is what getting a salary is. This is just the rest of my life. I'm going to hate it. So that was like a real low until one day I woke up and I was like, nah, just quit. The second time was when I first joined Zendesk. I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. But the guy who the designer that I was supposed to be his apprentice, actually, he left on paternity leave after one day of me being there. So it was like literally, here's your computer, and we'll figure it out. Now there's like a second element to that. He was like the designer for the CEO. So then because I was his apprentice, I had to they were kind of hoping that I would be up to speed a little bit by that time. They took a long time to hire me, and I ended up having no time with him to actually have any teachings of sorts or mentoring. And he had a speaking engagement. The CEO for my company is a brilliant person, but he's also very particular on how he gets really frustrated, and he's the type of person that will tell you all the things that is wrong with something, but won't give you an ounce of but it could be like this. He's not like that. He's just this is wrong because of X, Y, Z, D, you name it. And I was, on these meetings with no experience. I've never worked in a place that had like thousands of employees, with like the head of like marketing and like as other people were trying to like figure out what this man wants. He has to like speak somewhere like 2 weeks, and I would just spend every time that we do like a presentation for him, it has like custom illustration, and like there's a person like writing like the VP of communications like doing his speech and all these things, and it has to be distilled into this very minimalistic thing, and I just wasn't getting it. I was like going to the bathroom and like crying because I was like, they're gonna for sure fire me, and I can't believe I fucked this up. Sorry. Like I was like, I just got hired here. But you know what? Like now and now I do stuff for him all the time, and sometimes it's terrible and sometimes it's great, and that's just it was kind of like the perfect first project that I had there. It was just like this gnarly thing, and I think at the end of it they were like, you survived. So yeah, that was it.
So it sounds like a lot of this work is like kind of like a baptism of fire in one way, shape, or form, right? That's kind of what I heard from Charlotte and Gabby. And then Kelsey, I thought what you said was really, really interesting, because you were like, when life happens as a freelancer, it gets amplified a million times over. And I think that is something we do not even talk about in the gig economy at all. So I really, really appreciate that insight and that perspective, 100%. Because I know a lot of people in this room are thinking about freelancing. They already are freelancing, and they're trying to make it work. So thank you. Okay. Now the flip side to that is I want to hear about like one of the most amazing, coolest projects you've worked on, or a memory, or just like the complete antithesis of rock bottom, where you were like on cloud 17 and you were just enjoying it, and you were just like, I can't believe I get to do this.
Well, I don't know if I've had one of those moments fully. I will say it's kind of the opposite of your life. I work at like the giantest company of all time, and so there are just so many interpersonal things that you have to deal with, just like having a manager, how to work with engineers, how to track this like 200-person team to get this one thing done. But so if anyone works on a bigger team, so kind of the opposite direction of freelance, having a really good manager, like that completely changed my life. When I first started, I was just kind of like siloed, and I didn't really have like a design mentor really. And it was really hard, and I didn't feel like I was part of the team. I didn't feel like I was doing my best work, because I was just like, well, I mean, it's like I'm doing it, like it's fine. But then I got a really great manager, and having someone there that cares about your career, cares about you as a person, and is like actually good at design too, is like the best. So definitely when I got my first manager, and then my second manager, who were like kind of took over for him, it really opened me up. I felt really empowered. I got to design like a whole visual system. I got, when people have the confidence in you to do the work, it made me like motivated to like do my absolute best. So that's something I keep in mind now, of like, it's not just the technical work, it's the people that you're around, and really checking in with yourself is something I have a hard time doing. I'm like very extroverted, and I don't like dwell on my feelings, but I would say that most of the day, if you get a full-time job, like that's most of your life is going into this office. So really check in with how people are making you feel. Like, this boss made you feel like terrible, and just know that like that's you don't have to just take it, because if you just take it, it also affects the quality of your work. If you're in a good position, like your work is going to be better. You're gonna just be able to get to that like next level that you want to get to. So I would say, yeah, check in with how you feel about people and be like soft and squishy and let your feelings out. And just don't just like suck them up just to do the work, because it's not good for yourself and it's not good for the work either.
I will balance out my crappy day of yesterday by proving my point. One of the best days I've had professionally was less than a week ago. It was on Friday, so they literally go like this sometimes. But I convinced a client to let me art direct a photo shoot for them, which wasn't in the original scope of work. But I just saw this thing that like maybe would elevate the work that we were doing together. It's going to be a little bit more expensive. It's going to take a little bit more time, but here's why I think it will be really cool. Showed them some like neat examples of photo styles that I was like going for, and they said yes. And it was awesome because A, I convinced someone to do something that I'm like not an expert in by any means. 2, I got to make my work better by kind of like putting it out there and like advocating for increasing the scope of work. 3, I got to hire one of the dope photographers that I showed her. I just reached out to this dude who I had never met, who I followed on Instagram, and was like, I need to do a shoot with like a local Oakland photographer, and I love your work. And he was like, yes, I'm in. And then I just got to like wander around in Oakland and take really beautiful photos of people in the community, and the work looks awesome. And so I don't know, it's just like you can have days like that sometimes too, and then I always try and I always forget to like reflect back on why those days were great. And I think it's okay, I was advocating for myself. Mm-hmm. I was trying to make the work better in a way that I really believed in. I was finding people to collaborate with. It's like always about people. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of got to like switch it up a little bit and try something new. And I like need to remind myself of those things, because when I'm having these days that are like pretty tough, I can be like, okay, like what can I do to make the work better? Or like who could I partner with to make this more enjoyable, or to like get me out of bed, or like whatever it might be. And so yeah, it was a fun day. It was last Friday.
That's awesome.
Yeah. For me, it's for sure like a people thing. I have amazing managers, and I've had a couple now, and it just like gets better and better. And then there's a lot of independence to what I do, and then also I really like I work for a company that's like, oh, I want to do this, and then they'll be like, okay, like they're not like, okay, why? And then also cool, like, you know, go for it. So then when you try and like do these things that you are trying to improve, it just brings you so much, again, like fulfillment to a certain extent. And there's just like been so many instances that I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna like pull this off, or like why I'm in this room, or why, you know, like any of it, but just, you know, you are the expert of your own thing. I'm sure somebody in finance feels the same, you know, like they're all like, oh, I'm not the best at, you know, doing the charts or whatever. You are, as like the creative person in whatever realm you are, there's like somebody who feels completely handicapped and is in like in like a big awe of you and your abilities. So then just keep that in mind everywhere that you go. And yeah, it's sometimes you gotta like pull yourself out of like your own department and like all the wonderful creative people that you're going to be around, and then, you know, see like what are you doing this for, like who are you, what problem are you solving, and then you're going to see that you are providing such a wonderful thing to whoever you're helping, whoever you're designing or doing whatever you're doing. So that feels good too. That's him.
Great. Thank you, panelists. So the next question, by the way, I just want to remind, for those of you all who came in a tad late, the note cards are for you to write questions for our panelists. And when you have questions, I'm going to come around and scuttle and pick them up and then ask these questions later, okay? So if you haven't been thinking of questions, you should be, because they're here for you, right? Utilize the note card. Okay. Let's get a little silly. You are a new crayon color in the box. What color are you and why? You are a new color in the crayon box. What color are you and why?
I would want to be like shiny black, like how like a beetle is like black and purple. Because I saw a car that was like that, and I thought it was super cool. And I feel like it would go with all the other colors very well, and just like add a little extra, like luxury look. So like shiny black beetle. That's what I would be.
I would like to be a transparent crayon with glitter inside of that, because I've never seen that before, and I think that'd be dope.
Good idea.
Yeah, ooh, coffee mug. Yeah, that sounds dope, and then I would name it like, speckles of rainbow barf. Yeah,
Very good.
I don't know. Yeah.
I always come back to food things, so I think my color would be like stone fruit, like a stone fruit crayon, which is probably really dorky, but does everyone know what stone fruits
No.
are?
No.
Most people don't. I'm obsessed with stone fruits, and they're almost in season. So they're like apricot, anything with a pit in the middle, so a nectarine, an apricot, a peach, a pluot, a plum, a cherry.
Avocado?
No, not a stone fruit. So yeah, not a mango. But anyway, any of those types of fruits. So it would be sort of like an orange sunrise dreamsicle color. That was really juicy.
Yeah, it sounds yummy.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, thank you, panel.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when we tell our parents we want to do creative work, they usually want to disown us. And that may not be the case for everyone, but I just find that, the phrase, kids, you really want to piss your parents off, tell them you have an interest in the arts. I would love to hear about someone in your life, even now, before, that really was like a positive force for you and supported you and said, yes, you can do this, and let me help you, and this is how I'm going to help you. And the reason why I ask this question is that we all have someone who's helped us along the way, right? No one ever does anything absolutely solo dolo. So that's the context around this question for me.
I've never had anybody be super negative about it. I guess, get rid of those people. Like, they're not your friends. If they're your parents, you didn't choose them, that's fine, but you can always, they're people, you can prove them wrong. My parents were super business types, but they're always super supportive. So I think that was like the most amazing part. I moved to the United States when I was 18, and my parents didn't technically have the money to pay for my international student fees. I actually came to City College. And I was like, I'm going to move to San Francisco, and I'm going to be in this other country, and I'm going to be an artist. And then they were like, cool, like, if anybody can do it, you can. You are wonderful. So I think that's, even something that they couldn't even begin to understand. So that was really cool. They were not cool about other stuff. I'm going to go ahead and say that, but they were cool about that.
Yeah, I would say my dad is a chemist, and he was just like very confused that by what I wanted to do, but he was never really against it. He just was kind of clueless, and once I started when I was in high school, I did like pre-college in San Francisco Academy of Art University. I started doing that. And I started getting really liking what I was doing. I was doing figure drawing, and I was felt like I was killing it. But I remember my mom telling me, she was like, he has no idea if you're good or not. And I'm like, oh, well, what does that mean? And he goes up to me and asks me, he's like, is she good? Like, is this okay? Like, should she do this? And my mom was like, yeah, she's good. She's good enough. So it was more just like him just like not understanding. But yeah, my mom said I was good. So I kept doing it. Yeah.
I'm very stubborn, so it's usually when people are like, you can't do that I like feed off of that energy a little bit. Or so I don't think I necessarily took the path that I went down because someone was like, you got this, like you're awesome. Like positive reinforcement is really gratifying, I think, like for me once I'm already on that path. But like I was sort of more motivated or excited about the like, is that a good idea? Or that's not how things are normally done. Or have you really done that before? Or that's not what you studied in college. And it wasn't an offensive thing. It was more of like a curiosity of like, they're kind of true. That is not the way that it's normally done. Or I didn't study this in college. Like, let me see if I can figure it out. And so those were really motivating. And I think like my parents, my mom, I got really upset with her because when I decided to quit my job and start freelancing, my parents were like, what the heck? Like, we thought this weird phase of traveling and doing your own thing was sort of over when you got this like real job, right? And they were like, my mom specifically was like, I don't think it's a good idea for you to leave your current job until you get a new job. And I got so upset with her. Like, I got really, really, really upset with her for a while about that because I felt like she was she'd been so supportive of me kind of across the board my whole life. And that felt super negative. And then I felt like really something switched and I felt really grateful for that advice because as my mom, like, she sort of had to say that. Like, I think someone in my life had to be the, like, voice of the safety net almost. Mm-hmm. Like, as your mom, I only want you to be happy and taken care of and financially stable and all of these things. Like, maybe you should think twice about not doing this. And when I talked it through with her, she's the most supportive person out of anyone in my life right now with like what I'm doing. But I think, I don't know, I'm just telling a counterexample perhaps of like sometimes people cannot be supportive and you can take something else out of it. It can actually be kind of like a good thing, and whether it's proving them wrong or being like, wow, I really appreciate you for like making sure I'm taking care of myself, but I'm going to do the total opposite thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I think it just goes to show you that a lot of times it requires the inner strength and really listening. Don't listen to the haters, but really listen to the positive reinforcement in your life. Okay. So I have 2 more questions, and then I would love to start getting more of these note cards, y'all. If you have some questions, put up in the air, and I'll come by and I'll grab them. Oh, there we go. Oh, wonderful. They're coming up. Excellent. Okay, my penultimate question. What do you know now that you wish you had known when you were getting started? What do you know now that you wish you had known when you were getting started?
Oh, I have a super concrete one. When I moved to San Francisco and I didn't know anybody, I was trying to network, which I'm sure you will do your entire life. And you'll get introductions to people and then you'll ask them to grab a coffee. And a lot of these people are really, really busy and have professional lives. And I'm saying this now as someone, basically one of the things that bothers me now that I did all of the time, like nonstop when I was a bit younger and starting out, was I would email people and ask them to get coffee, just like generally, just to like connect. Like, do you want to grab coffee and talk? Like, I'm interested in what you do. I think I like love getting coffee or meeting up with people now who are like, hey, I want to grab coffee with you because I want to know this specific thing, or I want to hear about your experience in X, or I'm trying to do this and would love for your advice on that, versus it just kind of like, can we generally connect? And so like whoever you're reaching out to network with or get advice from, like just take like 5 minutes to kind of get a little bit more of a background on them and think of like one specific question that you want to ask them and or one specific thing that you want to get advice on, and like put that in your email and like your conversations will go so much further. You'll get a lot out of them, and more people will say yes to like meeting up with you and chatting with you.
I think that's a great point. I would also add, like, don't be afraid to just like really like go for it. Like, everyone is so busy, and I'm not like trying to be a jerk, but like I'm probably not gonna like go hunt you down if I haven't heard from you. Like, it needs to be on the person that's like trying to make the connection to really just go for it. Just like be like, hey, this day and this time like works. Does this work for you? And yeah, I think being specific kind of really helps the person that you're trying to connect with. One, make it easier for them to like actually do it, and two, it lets them like actually prep for something that like they can actually try and help you with. The general like questions, like you go into, you're like, all right, well, I guess we'll just like, you know, chit chat, but it helps like coming from on the other end to like know like, oh, this person really wants to know like how to get into, you know, UI for specific mobile, you know, whatever. And then you can actually like do some like research on your end to like try and give them the best information. I would also add that the one thing I didn't know that I know now is that it does not matter where you go to school, what like any of that. I think, you know, for maybe other fields it really matters like what business school you went to or where you got your master's or whatever. Like in visual design, it's like it's your portfolio. It's like the work that you do and the experience that you've had. And don't be afraid to like, if you don't think the experience you had is like real job or whatever, like no, it was. And talk about it professionally, and talk about it and own what you did, and, you know, make it seem like the real work that you actually did. And, you know, it's just all about your portfolio. And your portfolio is something that you can work on by yourself in your room, and you don't need a real job to do it. You can be like, hey, I'm gonna like, that's a cool app, I'm gonna like do a redesign of it. And that's just something that you just do. And you don't need someone to tell you to do it. You can just do it and put it in your portfolio, and that's like a real project. And you can talk about it professionally, and you can talk about the decisions that you made and why you made them. So yeah, so it's, when I interview people, like, I don't really care about, you know, where they came from. I don't care about, you know, all the fancy things on your resume. It's really just like, do I think that you can do the work?
Yeah, and then I was gonna say towards that, you could have the most amazing portfolio in the world, but if you're not nice, no one's gonna hire you.
Yeah.
And that's like and I see it all the time, especially like working like at a tech company that's like just hiring so many people. Like we like, you know, and my team, like we literally at this point we're like, anybody with a beating heart. I don't care.
There are lots of beating hearts.
I know. That's like another wonderful thing. You're living at a moment right now where there's so much opportunity right now. There's so much opportunity, which was not the case in 2003 when I graduated. It sucks then. There was like nothing. So yeah, there's that. And then you know, be nice, show your stuff, have your questions ready, and even send them in advance to the person. And it also, like, for yourself, you don't want to be at a situation where you're just like, you know, just like stumbling upon. And then to even outside of that, actually do ask. I was the opposite of you. I had I wouldn't ask anybody anything. I would go to like all these networking things, and I would bring a friend, and then I would just talk to my friend. I wouldn't talk to anybody else. And then, you know, I started, you know, following people on Instagram and like doing all these things, or and then just being truly interested in different things. And then now the same kind of situation that would work for you, it works for someone else. Like, just whenever you write someone, you know, like how you know, how would you like to receive that? And just know that most people will say yes, you know, to whatever you need from them. You know, like the ability of people, like the wanting of people to help out is like way stronger than whatever rejection. And if they say no, you just didn't meet them, and that's fine. You hadn't met them before, you know. And that's how you have to take the jobs too. So many times, especially like right now, like when you get out of school, you start applying, it's gonna feel crappy. It's so much rejection all at once. But you can't be sad. You know, you are gonna apply for jobs and you're not gonna get them. Or sometimes you're not even gonna hear back. And in your head, you're gonna be like, oh my God, this job is absolutely perfect for me because of XYZ reason. Don't fall into that trap. Like, you've never had that job, so you know, you can't be sad about it. You never had it. And they're jerks because they didn't hire you. They're missing out. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about the rejection piece just from like previous life, Kelsey. When I was on the recruiting team at Asana, like other things I wish I knew, like prior to getting that job, I applied to a zillion jobs and got rejected for like all of them. And everything from like I didn't hear back to I would interview and go all the way and they would say no, to people telling me, no, you're too experienced, you're too qualified, which is like the worst no that you can get too if you're broke and you really need a job, you know? And I'll say, I mean, I took every single one of those personally. Like every email I didn't hear back from, any person who rejected me after a phone interview, like anything, I took it so personally. It felt like the end of my world. Like it was tough. And then I went on the recruiting side and dealt with all of these job applicants. Mm-hmm. And then I was a hiring manager and was interviewing a bunch of people. And like, I kind of want everybody to do that in the same way that like everyone kind of says you should be in the service industry or be a bartender or a waitress or a waiter at some point in your life. It's because I really realized that the like recruiting cycle is super, super flawed. Like a ton of people interview or apply to jobs, and a lot of it has to do with like how many recruiters are on the teams, like sifting through emails, like where they are in the process with other candidates, like these very, very specific team needs that even if you have this like super, super dope designer who's interviewing for a role, you might reject them because they're not the right fit for this specific team makeup. And so like as much as possible, just try to put it in your head to not take like job rejection personally and just like keep going at it, because I took every one personally and I just like cried for months and months and months. Yeah. And then I got on the other side of it and I was like, oh my God, 95% of that wasn't me at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally.
So. I have like two more things to that too. You're gonna apply for something, creative. Like your resume needs to be cool. Like, I'm sorry, but like I've had like a lot of friends that try to like, oh, can you refer me? Yeah, it's fine. And they send me like a PDF, just like a regular ass PDF. And I'm like, no, you can't. Like, you have to take every opportunity that you have to show your personality. Like, make your business cards cool, make your resume cool, like write that cover letter specifically to the company. I used to write cover letters that were like, my name is Gabbi and I'm great. Like, no, this is not about you. It's about what you can do for someone else. So, so many things I didn't know before.
Yeah, such an idiot.
Aria told me to do. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, ultimate question, and then we'll open it up for the gallery. If anyone still has pending questions, please put your note card in the air and I'll come and scoop it up. All right, I see two. I'll put it right there. You can choose your own adventure. Best or worst piece of career advice you have ever received? Best or worst piece of career advice you have ever received? Take it away, panel.
Best was ask for more money.
Yep.
Over and over and over and over again. Best advice.
That is part of it's kind of the same thing, but you're going to go to interviews and you're going to feel like it's all on you and they're judging you. But it's hard to believe, but you are also judging them. And so don't treat it as like it's all just about what they think of you. Like, you're there to, like, you know, are the people that are interviewing you, like, kind of jerks? And are they, like, what is the culture like there? You know, like, you're interviewing that company just as much as they're interviewing you. And so just be really observant. Like, were you getting, like, rushed from, like, interview room to interview room? And do they, like, look like they don't have their shit together? Because that is totally what it's like at Google. And just kind of take note of that, because, you know, if you get the job, like, you're going to be working there, and you're the only one that kind of has to deal with that every day. Waking up is like, do I want to go to this place? Do the people fit, you know, what I see myself working with? So hopefully that takes a little bit of pressure off the interview process as well, because it's really not. One, it doesn't work out for so many different reasons that you have no idea about, that have nothing to do with you. And two, like, you know, if it doesn't work out, it's like it probably wasn't the right fit for you either. So, yeah, that was my advice.
I think the best thing that you could ever do, and this is going to sound ridiculously cheesy, and I'm sorry, but just try to be yourself. It's a weird situation. You're like in a room and you're like, give me a job. But if you go ahead and just are not like legitimate, then they have like this other, they're not hiring you, they're like hiring this other perception of you. So under these really crappy circumstances, try really hard to, like, you know, be yourself, and then don't beat yourself up afterwards, because I know it's really hard. Like, after you come from an interview, you're like, why did I say or didn't say, or all these things, and that was not funny, that was creepy, you know, like all these things. Like, everything that happened that was already a thing, it happened. Like, move forward. If they call you back, good. If they don't, that's fine. But yeah, just take it as that, like.
Yeah, the be yourself thing is like so key. I had a friend when I started working at Asana. It was mainly all men. It was all engineers, and I was like this young girl who was in an admin role, and I felt really out of place. And I was like trying to play by their rules, sort of, and show up in meetings in the same way they were. And I had a friend of mine being like, nope, like, they need somebody like you in that space. Like, there's clearly a lack of whoever you are in that space, and just go and do that, and like be feminine, you know. You don't have to like if you don't want to wear tech t-shirts all day, like, you don't have to, like, wear whatever you want. And just, I don't know, it's just, that was like the best advice ever, and it really shifted for me, because I constantly felt like I couldn't like stack up to the majority of the people and how they operated there. And so I just like I was not acting as myself the first few months, and the second someone said that to me, it just like really shifted. So that was great advice as well.
All right. So now we turn to the wonderful wonderfuls in the audience. And we have a question with quotes, the portfolio issue. There are so many digital ways to show your work, so many platforms like Adobe Portfolio, Behance, WordPress, themes. What's best? What do potential employers really care about? Just the work? I believe this was hinted on, so let's just go with, what's the best platform, in your opinion? And maybe why?
I actually haven't heard of, like, what is Adobe Portfolio? Yeah.
I got advertised for it. But
I would say have a website. However you want to have a website. If you're going to, I mostly see people now doing decks. Like, it's like more of a presentation, rather than like a PDF of a portfolio. But yeah, I don't think it matters too much, as long as it's clean and it's not gonna, like, someone's not gonna have to like download some sort of app to see your portfolio. Just make it, you know, really, really easy for them to see it right away. And I think too, just having a deck or having a presentation puts you, one thing that I struggled with so much, and then my teacher in school told me, it completely changed the way I thought about portfolios, was like, it's a story. Like, you are, from page 1 to the end, like, you are telling a story about who you are and what your work is. I think having a deck kind of puts you in that frame of reference right away, where it's a presentation. But so many portfolios, you see, it's just like things are like just kind of thrown together, and you're not telling the person that's looking at it like any sort of, it's just like a hodgepodge of work. When really, when you're looking at a portfolio, it should, there's ways to, you put your best piece first and your like best other piece at the end, and like everything should kind of flow together. So I think thinking of it as a presentation of like, imagine that you're in a room and you're gonna be showing someone, walking through, because most likely if you're in an interview, that's actually what you're gonna be doing. But yeah, just kind of having that storytelling frame of reference for your portfolio just helps a lot, and it helps the person that's looking at it know what they're looking at, because sometimes you're just like, what is all of this?
Yeah.
What about when it's a landing page? Like, how do you present that? Do you put in the whole landing page? Because I already I took a visual design class at General Assembly, and my credit was about landing page. And then it posted in my website, but then I was like, how should I show it? Just like make a screen print and show it, the whole thing, or how can I show the landing page when it's like the whole thing?
I think there are a lot of really good, like, the best thing for this type of thing is just like find designers who have cool portfolios and like look at examples and do whatever feels right to you. The one thing I will say for something like that is like, so I share a lot of web work on my portfolio, for example, and sometimes I'll just show like sort of the top of a landing page because that's the coolest part, and the rest is just kind of like information hierarchy, or I'll show the whole page, I'll show the page against the old one. I think the most important thing for any of this is like, that I've found in looking at portfolios is write just a little bit about what you did on a project. So if you did the whole thing, say that, like end to end, like strategy, design, copy, whatever, but like show a cool video that you worked on with a group, even if you weren't the videographer. Be like, I was a producer on this, or I did the illustration on this. Like, just add some clarity. The presentation of the page matters so much less, I think, in my opinion.
A couple of things, which I'm like, portfolios just like, just cringe. Mine's like super outdated. I should probably take care of that. But having said that too, in terms of showing your work, it doesn't matter like how you do it. Just try to like have something for the world to see. It doesn't matter if you don't think that it's ready at all. Like, and then also something that I learned when I was going to Bayback was that people can tell your abilities right away. So like if you have a portfolio, just have 3 to 5 pieces on it. There's no point in having 20. Like, by the time you're just like crowding it, and people can get a good sense of where your skill set is at, like, right around the 3rd piece. If you're eccentric and your kind of work kind of lays everywhere, like, show that. It shows range. It shows that you're just not doing the same thing and that you're a one-trick pony. But it's hard. But I would mostly just copy somebody's portfolio that you think is really cool and then go for it.
100%.
Yeah.
Just to talk about the platform thing a little bit more, to try to make it tangible, like, I think having your own website, even if it's just like Kesley Aroian is a designer in San Francisco, landing page, like, that's a must. Like, you just have to get your URL with your name, like, get a website, do it through Squarespace, it doesn't matter. Like, just having some web property that's yours, I think, is like the most important. At a bare minimum, if you need to like link to, have little icons and like link to your LinkedIn and link to your Dribbble or link to Behance, that's okay, as long as there's just like a home for you. Ideally, you'll have a website and it will have a larger subset of your work displayed in kind of like whatever way that you want. But I think a website, just think of it as an incredible opportunity to tell a deeper story about yourself, present the work in the way that you want, get a little creative, show your point of view. And then you can kind of think of things like Behance and Dribbble as almost like distribution platforms as well. They act as portfolios for a lot of designers who don't have portfolios, but it's also a really good way to get your work seen. or to like recruiters, for example, like look in Dribble all the time to like find, you can search by like illustration or, you know, iconography or by location. So having some presence on there is kind of nice and you can show a wider range, but the portfolio, the site is like really well where you can tell a story. So even if it's just like a splash page that links somewhere else, like just do that tonight. If you don't have one yet, I'd recommend that.
Yeah, I think a website's definitely the easiest. And the fewer, if everything can be on there, organized nicely, that's the best. Anytime that you're linking out, just know that like you are lowering the odds that anyone is going to go farther, right? Like if you can just make it all right there, that's like, oh, there's everything, super easy.
And look at it as an opportunity too, right?
Yeah.
Like on Dribble or Behance, you can't really like tell this story about why you're excited about the project, like what you did on the project. Like that's what people want to know too, especially for designers. Like when I was in recruiting and recruiting designers, like I would see these even beautiful portfolios and these like all these like web pages and everything, and I would look and be like, well, did this person do everything on this web page, or did they just do this specific part? The more specific, the better, you know.
Thank you. So I have a really interesting question here, and I wanted to make sure I'm reading it correctly. The question here is, how do you design for emotion? Is that correct from the question? Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that. How do you design for emotion?
I would say just be emotional yourself. Like, right? I mean, like, think about, God, Google is such like a good example of like, some products work really well, but they don't make you feel good while you're using them. Like they're like technically great, but they don't make you feel like safe, or they don't make you feel like taken care of while you're using them. So I think like honestly, if you're designing something, it should be about the way that it makes someone feel when they use it, or when they look at it, or when they, you know, watch it. And to design for emotion, I think, is just have intent, be like a human in the world. Like you're not just like, you know, being a designer is actually like 10% actually like designing something, and like 90% like understanding the context of why it's there, why you're being asked to do this, understanding like what you're presenting, how that will affect society. I don't know, that's kind of like a deep answer, but I think it's just being aware of all those things, not just throwing something on a page because it looks cool. Like just think about the next time that you see something that you really like, and think about why you like it, or something that you really don't like, and like, oh, why do I not like that? So I would say it's more of like just a mindset that you have to be in. I don't know if there's any like technical things that you can do really.
I would say that you need to find a way to get excited about what you're doing, because what happens often too is that when you find a solution on like, oh, this works, like I know that if I make this in this grid, and then like I know these 3 colors work together, and boom, like you have something that's like nice looking with this typography and this thing, and then it's done. That's not, when it's something that's just like nicely put, you know that, but you're not really excited about it. So then every time that you do something, just go ahead and be like, oh wow, like I could really, the challenge is to, you know, communicate this, or this is for this audience, but why are we even making it what it is? You know, like why is this a presentation? Why is this a newsletter? Why is this a website? Like how, sometimes like people think that, especially in design, like a lot of designers will walk into a situation being like, I know exactly how we're gonna solve this issue. And that's so wrong. Like every time that you do anything, you have to be like, what are we trying to do with this, right? And how could we make it better, in a sense? So I think it's kind of letting go of the things that we're used to doing, and then just be really excited about what you're doing, even though it's super scary sometimes. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists. Okay, Andrea, would you like to ask your question? Not yet? Okay. Very good then. I just want to make sure we get that question correct. Okay, so here's a question. What are some of your best practices / methods for asking to get paid for design work? What are some of your best practices / methods for asking to get paid for design work?
Kelsey will probably be able to answer this in a correct way. I was so bad at it in school. It's just kind of puts you in a place where you like have to have your own self-worth, and like if you don't have that, it's like really hard to ask someone else. One thing I did learn, I've gotten better at it, but one thing I did learn, especially with specifically illustration, was to put how many revisions you will do in the contract specifically. Like we'll get like 5 thumbnails and 2 directions, and from those 2 directions you will get like 2 sets of revisions, and every set of revision after that is like an extra $200. And put that in every step, because what happens is that you will get a contract and you're like, whoa, this is a lot of money, like this is awesome. And then the revisions will just keep coming and coming, and by the time you spent like, so many more extra hours on it, you're like, this was like, I got paid like $2 an hour for this stupid project. So revisions, that's like, put that in your contract right away.
How many would you recommend?
It depends, and you can talk to like the scope of the project. If it's like, for me, if it was a simple illustration, you'd get a bunch of thumbnails, and then you'd get, maybe if you show someone something, they'll come back with 1 set of revisions, and hopefully that will encompass everything. But if you need another set after that, I would build that in as well. But yeah, that's something to negotiate. I would say like 2 to 3. And you can be really clear, like the 3rd set of revisions is not, you're not redrawing the whole thing. It's like these are minor fixes at this point. And then you can build like however, put some crazy amount for every revision after that, because if they like don't have their shit together and keep asking you for it, like they should pay for it.
Yeah, if there are specific questions about that, I'm happy to answer them, because I have to deal with this all the time, and it will vary from client to client. Like, you just want to not only give them a budget, but tell them like what's going into that budget, your process, right? So for this price, we're gonna have like a kickoff meeting. You're gonna give me some assets, and I'm gonna design this. We're gonna have a meeting. You're gonna give me feedback. I'm gonna come back to you with revisions, and then you're gonna get the final thing.
Yeah.
But to talking about like how do you get someone to pay you for design work? So if you're just starting out, I have a feeling that the people who you're gonna get the work from in the beginning are friends or family. They're gonna know that you do design, and they're gonna ask you for stuff, and they're probably gonna ask you for it for free. My first advice is like not doing it for free, because you're a professional, but that's up to you. I think the best, I think that, what's her name? It's Jessica Heisch. I think it's Heishe. If you search that, you'll find something. She has this whole like web tool about how to ask for money as a designer under like a zillion different inputs, and it's so awesome. But my suggestion is like figuring out like what market rate is for a designer of your skill set per hour or per project. And when you're starting out, your aim is going to be like getting experience, getting work in your portfolio, and like building your network, not necessarily making like top dollar. That will come. And so I've had a lot of success in either myself or like advocating for designers and trying to get them in front of a client to get paid, where you're just really transparent about like, hey, this is what my rate is normally, but because I really like this project, because we're friends, and because X, Y, or Z, I'm willing to do it for you at this discounted rate of whatever. But I think it's really important for you to communicate, even if you do a piece of work for free, like making sure whoever you're working with knows your professional value. Because if you do great work, they're also going to refer you to somebody else, and that person like needs to pay you, right? And so you don't ever want to do work for like $10 an hour when you really should be getting paid like $50 an hour, unless the person you're working for knows that your rate is $50 an hour and you're giving them a discount. I would also say if you're thinking about taking like freelance design projects, just like experiment and don't beat yourself up. There's gonna be times, I think, when you ask for way less than you should have asked for, and all this situation that like Charlotte just described is gonna happen like a lot. But just be like communicative. Don't be afraid of asking for more money. And if the client, it's also very normal, I would say, like ask for what you think you're worth or what you want to get paid for a project. And it's really normal for a client to come back to you and say like, no, I'm really sorry, I can't afford that. And then you can find a way to negotiate. Or if a client is like, yep, no problem, think about like whether you should ask for more money next time. Like maybe you're asking less than what everyone else is asking for.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big believer in like figuring out what you're worth and asking for that, and also finding opportunities to take work that will pay you a little bit more money so you can say yes to like these kind of weird passion projects, or like helping a friend out for like a third of what someone else will pay you. So yeah, if there are any more like specific questions about like scoping or budgeting or asking for money, I'm happy to answer them. Anything good?
I think you're covered.
All right. Panelists, I'm kind of a shy gal guy. I know that I got a network. How do I make that work if I'm kind of an introvert? Any tips?
My tip, because I'm very bad at networking, is, and I think from being on the other end, it's really obvious if you're just like trying to get a job with someone. Like if you're just kind of being thirsty and you're not actually interested in talking to them, it's really apparent. I would say to make networking easier and to make literally any conversation you have with a human person easier is to just be passionate and just talk about the work. Don't be trying to get something from them. Just, like if you're in a room full of designers, they will totally geek out on whatever new thing is out there, and just kind of show that you have passions, that you know what you're talking about, and that you're just like, just trying to have a regular conversation with someone. I think there's a lot of pressure when you like go to a networking event that you're like, you're networking, but really like you're actually just in a room full of people that are probably interested in a lot of the same things that you're interested in. And you can just geek out and take the pressure off and not feel like it needs to go anywhere. And I think too, like if you're like trying to hit someone up to like get coffee or something, like you can also like that's kind of the next step, like once you're doing that networking thing. And I think that's a good place to like have those really specific career questions and kind of come more like we're doing this. But I think if you're like in a room full of people, just be like the passionate person that you are, that likes to talk about and geek out on cool art stuff, because it's cool and people like talking about it.
I would say like put yourself in a situation where you have to talk to someone. A lot of these networking events now have specific people who are willing to mentor, and we'll have like little breakout sessions in which they you will be paired up with somebody who is a professional in the area that you want to develop yourself in. And I'm blanking out on the names right now, but there's like a ton of these, and that way you're forced to do it. You're like, okay, like I came to this thing, I listened to the lecture, and then now I'm like in a group of 5 people. The person who's mentoring you was in your position once upon a time, so everybody's like completely like sympathetic to that. So I would do that. Just put yourself in the position where you're just forced to talk to someone.
Yeah, I would also I'll presence it all with like networking really sucks, or like the idea of networking can suck, just sort of across the board. 2 things, like one, don't like, maybe it helped for me when I tried to take the pressure off like networking is networking, and just like, it's really nice for me to just constantly be expanding my circle of like cool people that I know, people I might want to collaborate with, not right now, but like 10 years in the future, people I can learn from, people that will maybe hire me, like just kind of like keep this regular cadence. And also like I can be pretty extroverted and like talking with people, but I like hate networking events and don't feel comfortable if I like go to a conference or event, like going up to someone and trying to corner them and talk to them and network. Do it in the way that feels right. Like be like, hey, I really enjoyed your talk. Like, can I get your email and could we maybe grab a coffee or follow up with someone separately? Like, you don't have to do it in these set ways of doing it. Just like do it in a way that makes sense and maybe jump on a video call or just a phone call or just via email. Like, just figure out an environment that like feels really good for you to just continually like build a network of people, whether they like serve this immediate need for helping you get a job right now or sort of in the future. So you can just interact with people in very like genuine ways. Like this, people can tell when you're trying to find a job, but if you're just there to like meet people and learn things and get new perspectives, sometimes it takes the pressure off a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Next question. How do you get an idea for a design project you've never done before or that you're not interested in? How do you get an idea for a design project you've never done before or you're not interested in? Excellent question.
Yeah, really good question.
Yeah. I have to do things that I hate all the time. That never goes away. A job's a job. Even if you like wake up every day being like, oh my God, I'm so excited that I get to do this for a living. So then this goes back to like the thing that I said earlier. Like the reason why you're finding it to be so dreary is because you're not particularly excited about it. So if you could like find a twist on it, that it can always like be done. Like even for like the most boring thing ever, like you can find a twist for it.
Can you give us an example?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to do a lot of like financial stuff, like, and I do like a bunch of things for like analysts and so many numbers and you know and so then I'll always be like, oh okay, like they're trying to like represent this thing and I'm like, okay, can we like make an illustration of it? And then if it's like something that's like dealing with complexity, can it, you know, be a pretzel? I don't know, like just stuff like that. Like you're a creative person for a reason, so like you can always find like the flip side of it, you know, like, and I'm sure that whoever is like paying you to do this would appreciate it too, because it sets them apart. So that's my advice on that.
The only thing I can think of is like when I first moved here, someone very nicely gave me some design work to do. It was like a mentor situation, but it was like little ads, like those like what are banner ads, like, you know, just I don't know, just shapes I don't necessarily like working in. So yeah, I think it's just like get your metaphor game on point. Like think of the most creative way that you can represent something that's kind of dull, and play with the medium that you have. So like these banner ads are like long and skinny and they're like, you know, they're not great for a lot of things, but just kind of use that as like, okay, well, how can I break this? How can I place things creatively? How can I make this? How can I use this shape? How can I use this like set of, you know, constraints that I have to kind of make it something weird and fun? And they'll probably come back and be like, this is too weird. And then you have to like tone it down. But at least, yeah, you like find a little bit of excitement in doing it.
Yeah.
I can give an example of like a client that I worked with that was creating this product that I was like, ugh. There's this company called Cloud App. And
Like the most vague.
Like, what do you do? You're in the cloud, you're an app, like, what else is new? Like, oh my God, I want to be telling cool stories about people with emotion and feeling, and oh God. But I was still sort of new to like freelancing and consulting, so I was like, I need the money, I'm gonna say yes, or like, I should say yes to this, and oh man, I mean, I just like could not get excited about this thing. And so what really helped for me is that I like flipped it on its head, and I was like, okay, what can I experiment with here? What can this project give me the opportunity to experiment with? And so for me, it was like, you know what, I like really want to start like hiring my own designers and like other people to collaborate with from the get-go on a project with me. Like, it'd be my team that I hire them. And I pulled in my two old colleagues of mine, a designer and so like another person who didn't really need to be on the project, but I wanted to work with them anyway. Pulled them in, and we like ended up working on this project, and it's to date the most fun project that I've ever worked on, because I got to like pull in like all these cool people that I wanted to work with, and we got excited and did creative brainstorming sessions and like made cloud app puns the whole time. And that project is actually the project that convinced me that I needed to start my own agency, because I had so much fun being like, oh my God, I can like bring my own team to the table. And so like you might be really surprised what like a really crappy project on its head like unveils for you. Anyway, yeah, cloud app. My head was in the clouds the whole time.
Was that the best cloud app pun?
No, we just went deep into it for like a long time.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Next question. Have y'all ever tried selling your art or creating some sort of passive income from your craft?
All the time. Yeah, I do watercolors on the side, and I have for years I've been kind of doing this watercolor series called The Tummy Aches and the Heartbreaks, and it just I don't do it for money, but it's really funny because I've always painted, but I never. And I was so serious about it. It's very serious. But then the moment that like I stopped being super serious about it and started making like these really like small like illustrations, kind of like sad but like funny things, like people really started responding to it, and then I would get asked to like do shows and like all these things, and then I was like, oh cool, this is not how I thought it was gonna happen, but yeah, it's super fun, and then if you're a creative person, like, and you do something small, like that thing can be just a lifesaver, especially if you do creative, if you have a creative career, like, you really invest so much of yourself in like what you're doing that like, please have like a side thing. Because it keeps you sharp, and because it brings a joy back into your life, and it's super fun. Like it is super fun. Like I could not recommend it enough.
Yeah, I would say that it's I like draw all day, do illustration all day, and it's kind of hard to do it when I come home. So it's kind of weird. It was like my hobby that turned into my work, and then I cook now instead. It's like a hobby. But yeah, I don't really try and sell or do freelance on the side anymore. But I would 100% agree. Like, find something, like, if you're going to be doing this for a job, it takes a lot of mental energy to be creative at work. And so if there's something small and silly that you can do at home, like I do, like for like birthday cards or like special occasions, I'll like be like, oh, this is a really good opportunity for me to like actually, you know, draw on my own. So yeah, so I think it helps, and it's yeah, like you said, it just keeps you sane.
It really does, yeah.
You gotta respect the maker in you, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't even have time to like make it, but I say yes to things. Like they're like, oh, you want to be on the show, or like, oh, we need like 5 pieces for like this thing. I'll just say yes to it because I feel like I would just like shrivel up and like die if I was just like designing on the computer and I had like nothing else like on the side. So yeah, it's really hard. Like creative work is just the same as, you know, any other work. But you want to kind of like keep that flame alive to a certain extent. So like do something artistic on the side for sure.
I just to give like a tangible example, there's this design agency called Ghostly Ferns, and they're a whole agency, but they have like a little online shop too, and like on their Instagram they'll like share cool products that they made. So if you're looking for like a cool example of how to do that, that's a neat like design agency where they're selling things that are like very on brand with like their whole aesthetic, so it propagates in a way. I don't have any like good points of reference if it's like a good stream of passive income selling your art. It's more of just like, do I want to make this for more people? And like it costs money to make, so I just am going to charge for it instead. Yeah.
Side hustle, y'all.
Side hustle.
Side hustle is real.
Yeah.
Okay.
I charge it because frames are expensive. Yeah. I charge for it because frames are expensive.
Yeah. Okay. Panelists, how did you sell yourself when you were looking for your first job and didn't have real experience yet?
Help me.
I went to school for illustration, so one thing that really helped was it's kind of counterintuitive, but like you want to be able to do all sorts of different things and like be able to pivot in any direction. But when you're selling yourself, like it's really helpful to kind of just be like, this is like a style that I do. It helps because someone like Kesley will be like, oh yeah, there's that girl that did like the cool flower stuff. And like, it just kind of like cements you in your mind of like, this person does this style. Not to say that you just do one thing, but like understand where you're trying to go and like, how can you look like this perfect little complete package that fits exactly as close as possible to where you want to go. People also have multiple portfolios. You can split stuff up very neatly. Like this is my illustration work, this is my design work. And so I personally knew I did children's artwork, and so all my stuff was like, boom, it's like, this is what I do. There was variance within it, but like it was very clear how I was trying to sell myself. And it made people, you know, if you're like trying to hire someone and you go to their portfolio and there's like all sorts of different stuff on there, it's kind of hard to like pinpoint them or know like where to put them. So yeah, it's like you write your own cover letter for every company. Like you kind of make sure what you're sending them is like specific to where you're trying to go. You don't have to show everything all the time. Like even if you have one really awesome piece but if it doesn't make sense with the rest of it, like you can leave that out. It's okay. I don't know if that you would agree with that advice, but specifically for illustration, I found that helped me like brand myself.
Yeah. I would say that San Francisco specifically, for somebody trying to break into the field, has like a ton of resources. The moment that I was like, that I woke up and I'm like, I'm gonna work for a tech company. I'm gonna really try and do this. You know, I went and then I was like, okay, like I want to go ahead and like do like a boot camp sort of thing. Looked into General Assembly, like stumbled into like Bay Area Video Coalition. And I'm like, I want to do this thing. And then they're like, cool, you might qualify for like a grant that's going to cover it. And I was like, oh my God, free? That's crazy. And it comes with like career counseling and like all these things. So like, know that there are resources out there. That speaks a lot right now that you're here attending this thing, because it means that you're focused, you're really trying to like get informed. San Francisco right now is going through this crazy change when it comes to like this tech boom, and these people are really trying not to be trying. I'm saying trying because a lot of them are a middle-aged white man, you know, like, so it's, you know, just put yourself in that position in which like all these companies have like a diversity and inclusion manager, like they have different programs to like bring mothers back into the workforce. They have all these different kinds of resources for people to like break into whatever field that you need to. Just try and figure out if you fit in one of these categories that, you know, you're trying to do, and just go for it. You know, there's like no shame in that. Just do it. I did it. It's great.
I would come back to Gabby's advice of just like being nice. Like a lot of people will sort of like give you your first job or like hook you up because you're like a nice person. So just like blanket advice, just like be nice to people. I would also say like I think it's probably a little bit different like if you're specifically a designer like in the creative field, like getting that first job, but I would say that like any job, if it's like your very first job, maybe this is controversial, I don't think you need to be super picky. I think getting some like real professional experience at a company is like a starting off point is a really like good thing. You're going to be that much more marketable as like a candidate if you have like some job and professional experience and you like know how to work in like a professional environment. Just like something is great. And like take it from me, my mind path is a little bit different since I'm not a designer, but like I started as a recruiting admin part-time at like a tech company. And, you know, I think I was like overqualified for the job at the time, or I definitely was, but like I took it because I didn't have a job. And it led to me getting a full-time job in recruiting, and then me moving over from recruiting to marketing and being a junior marketer and then getting trained and then like all of these things. So just kind of like baby steps, right? And then like I look back, it was such a big deal that I was like a recruiting admin and like difficulty finding my own job or my first job. Like it feels like a blip on the radar now. So just kind of think about it in baby steps.
All right. Got a couple more here. Can you talk more about your job interview experience and what you think you did well that helped you get the job? Can you talk more about your job interview experience and what you think you did well that helped you get the job?
I would say, God, don't pretend you know stuff that you don't. Like I was comfortable enough to say when I didn't know something, but show that I was like interested and willing to learn it. Yeah, I think if you try and like bullshit someone that's interviewing you, like they completely know it. So just accept that like if you're interviewing is probably for like an entry-level position and you're not expected to know everything off the bat, and you don't need to pretend that you do. And yeah, just be honest, because I think the number one thing is like just be nice, and it's all about the feeling that you leave the interviewer with. So if they feel like, oh well, you know, they're you know, they're junior, but they're like really passionate and they're eager, I think that's probably the most that you can do.
I spent 4 years at Asana and was like in recruiting. I mean, the amount of interviews that I took or people I interviewed is like staggering. And yet, like when I was thinking about getting ready to leave and I started interviewing elsewhere, I got on the phone in my first call and they asked me, where do you want to be in 5 years? This is like standard interview question, right? And I was like, I have no idea. And they were like, why are you leaving Asana? And I was like, oh God, I don't really know how to articulate this. I knew that they were going to ask me all of these questions. Like, there are standard interview questions around, like, what are you looking for in a job? Why are you interested in this company? Why are you interested in this role? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, all of these questions that you should expect in some form in an interview question. Like, I knew the answer to them internally, right? But I had never articulated them, and I just, like, bombed this interview, even though I, like, had been on the other side of it for years. I just, like, completely bombed it. And then I went home and I wrote out those questions, and I literally typed out answers to all of those. So the next interview I had, they were like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I was like, I'm so glad you asked. Like, I want to do this and this and this. Or I had this way, it wasn't like, it wasn't that it wasn't genuine, it was just, it gave me confidence in, like, explaining these things in a way that felt, like, right to me. And so just to get yourself in that position, like, write down those questions and maybe, like, a few more. Or, like, what's your biggest what do you do outside of work? Like, they asked me that, and I was like, oh God, like,
I live.
I don't know, I was just like, yeah, I'm just living. You know, and then I was like, no, and then I went home and I was like, yeah, I really like to cook. I like to go hiking. I like, just when your interviews are really scary. Yeah. So just, like, writing those questions down and knowing the answers to some basic questions is gonna really help you. And then I got the job, so it was nice. But, but man, I bombed that first one.
I think actually it's the opposite too. Like, you're going in an interview, but, like, you have to prepare questions for these people too. Totally. You know, because you're gonna be seeing these people more than you would ever see your boyfriend, girlfriend, housemates, whatever. You spend more time working. So make sure that you ask the right questions and, like, make them intriguing too. Like, I love it when I'm in an interview and I ask a question and then they're, like, taking it back and are like, oh, I really have to think about that one. It shows that you are in that state of mind, that you really are thinking about the situation, right? And it's not one of these, like, well, what's your ideal candidate? Like, they already know. It's whatever's in the description. That's, you know, like, that's what they're looking for. Yeah.
Gabbi, I'm so glad you said that, because that's, like, being an interviewer. The worst thing, remember this, the worst thing is that if you wrap up an interview and they go, so do you have any questions for me? And you say, no, not really. Like, no, don't ever do that. Like, it makes you feel like crap.
Yeah, you're just like, okay, cool then.
Yeah. All right, we're done.
Yeah. Even if it's, like, something personal, like, you know, about them, like, you know, the person who's, like, interviewing you, like, be like, how long have you been here? And, like, why do you work here? What's, like, your favorite thing about this whole place? Like, you know, just make it, you're going to work with this person, like, just try and, like, put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, we got 2 more questions and 5 more minutes, so let's see if we can make this happen. How do you overcome feelings of inadequacy or imposter syndrome?
Never.
Yeah, I feel like it's absurd I'm, like, sitting on this panel right now.
Yeah. To quote Lean In, which is such a but everybody says that. Sheryl Sandberg does say, like, that it's better done than perfect. And I swear to God, I'm like, oh, yes, like, better done than perfect. Nothing's ever going to be done. You're never going to be perfect at any aspect of your life. Anything, especially creatively, like I said, like, you're always going to think that everything that you did sucked a little bit, you know? So, yeah, just do it. Just, like, get it done, put it out there, make your website. If it's shitty, that's fine. It's out there. You can fix it later, you know? Like, just keep going.
Yeah, I would say it probably it hasn't gone away yet, but I sometimes catch myself, I'm like, oh, well, they probably also feel like a total imposter, so we just know that everyone's in it, no matter what level they're at, you know, they're just kind of trying just as much as you are. They're just under different circumstances, but everyone's just, like, trying to look like they know what they're doing.
Everybody's winging it
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I
For
have
real.
imposter syndrome every single day. Like, every single day I have imposter syndrome. Like, and it really got turned up when I started working for myself. And and when you start, like, getting paid for something, it, like, really flares up because then you're like, oh my God, they're expecting me to be this thing. And, like, oh my
I owe
God.
them now.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's helped me enormously in the past year and a half with this is I found a friend of mine, and I will also say I think women struggle with this, like, even more than men, or at least in my experience talking to people, but, like, find somebody who maybe, like, is doing what you're doing or is, like, a peer and, like, have a real conversation with them. I bet they struggle from imposter syndrome too. And just be like, yo, can you be the person who tells me that I need to be a girl boss, like, today, like, whenever I need it, or that I'm, like, actually up to the task. Like, I have a friend of mine who we don't even, like, know what the other person is talking about, like, honestly. Like, we just, like, will kind of bitch about work or whatever, or a client, or, like, this and that, or having a tough day, or I don't think I'm up for this, or I don't think I'm good. And their job is just to be like, nope, you are. Like, go do it. Like, send them the email. Like, go in and ask for a raise. Like, do this. And just having someone there, just, like, ask a friend to be a cheerleader for you or find somebody. Like, I think a lot of people struggle with this. And yeah, I mean, like, I have it every day. It's real.
You heard that, right, everybody? So make sure that we all heard that. I know some of you all always like,
Well, it's not very comforting, but
it's reality.
Might give you some more empathy, you know, like
Yeah,
everybody's
everyone,
faking it.
Yeah. I think a lot about like the CEO of my company, and he's such a smart dude, and I have incredibly respect for him. Like, I have so much respect for him and how he started this company, and, like, you know, he's like rich and, like, so, like, passionate and, like, so smart. And then, but then I think about it, and this guy 10 years ago started this thing, like, with two other dudes, you know, like, and was trying to make it happen. And he's never been a CEO before. I don't think that time that he was doing that, he was like, in 10 years I will have 17 global offices, 2,000 something employees, and, like, I don't know how much MRR. Like, no, he had no clue that he was going to be doing this. And I'm like, he's a first-time CEO. Everybody is always doing these things for the first time, and we're all trying to, like, climb this thing, you know. It just happens that when you have no experience, you're taking the first step, you know, each time, and then hopefully you're always uncomfortable, because if you're just okay with your everyday life, it means that you're not learning anything. So go be awkward somewhere.
All right.
Yeah.
And we will leave the wonderful Workforce Wednesday panel with this final question, and you can choose your own adventure. What inspired you to be on this panel today, or one thing you want us to take away from today? What inspired you to be on this panel today, or one thing you want us to take away from today?
I told Charlotte this when I was saying this. I need my doses of, like, just really cheesy stuff, and I don't know why I did this, but I heard Shonda Rhimes' The Year of Yes on audiobook, and she reads it, and she's cool. I don't even watch Grey's Anatomy or any other shows that she makes. I just think she's cool, and she just says, you know, like, that she was, like, doing all these things, but she was, like, so closed off to, like, opportunities and, like, saying yes to things. So then I was like, I'm going to do that. So this is me saying yes to things.
Yeah. Well, Aria inspired me to do this. You have an amazing resource right here, so do not take him for granted. He hits me up all the time to talk to people, and I do. And hopefully I can give them a little bit of advice, or just, like, be my real self and tell them, like, nah, sometimes it sucks. So take advantage of this dude because he's awesome. And then the thing I would say take away, like the three of us are just behind this table, like pure circumstance. Like all these people in the room, like they're your resources as well. You guys are all gonna come up, and like maybe you'll remember someone, and that's how like those connections are made. So, yeah, just everyone's just a person, and you never know kind of like what the connections you make will lead to.
Yeah, I'm also here because of you, for sure. Hello. I would also say that, like, I wanted, when I was figuring out, like, how to do anything that I was doing, like, I told you I studied Middle Eastern politics in school. Like, I didn't learn anything about what I'm doing right now in school. And the only way I learned was just from, like, incessantly asking people or, like, getting experience. But, like, most often, like, especially with what I'm doing right now, like, asking people, like, a zillion questions and trying to just get as many data points or pieces of information. And so that took me a really, really long time. And I'm happy to just, like, vomit out all of the information I gathered so that it's easier for somebody else. Like, even these questions around, like, what do you charge? Like, I asked, like, 15 people, like, what to charge, And so, but just, like, ask. And I will just say this, like, be really, like, truly just, like, be yourself and do the work that makes you really happy and that you want to do, because it will multiply. Like, if you're only doing the work that you don't want to do, like, and you're good at it, you're going to get more of that work. Like, do the work that you want to do more of and, like, fight for that, because it will, like, it will really multiply. And be nice to people.
That's, like, the number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for our panelists. So much in the game. One more time, round of applause for Princess and Fatima for getting paid for recording.